Multiple choice. Which of the following is the fully simplified form of 6 divided by the square root of 18? Well, personally, I think I could do this problem quicker without a calculator, but this is still technically on the calculator portion of the test. So here's a way that you could do this problem with a calculator. So we could take our calculator and we could type in 6 divided by the square root of 18. And we're going to get a big long decimal, which is fine. Then type in square root of 3. Square root of 3, which is answer A. Is that the same? No. It's not. It's not it. So let's try alpha y equals. And 6 divided by 3 times the square root of 2. Oh, look. It looks like that one is the square root, but is it the fully simplified form of that one? And actually, since there's a radical in the denominator, it's not that one. In fact, I should have crossed that one out to start. So it's not B. Let's try C, which is in simplified form. Alpha y equals to get our fraction button. Square root of 2 divided by 2. And as I scroll back up, or at least try to, there's our original problem, and I'm going to carry that down a little bit so we can see it one more time. But we do think that it should be the last one, as we type in the square root of 2. And sure enough, it does match. So our answer is letter D on this one. Now we move into the non-calculator part of the review. And it says, which equation below describes the function graphed on the grid to the right? Well, again, just like our quadratics, I recommend that you look at the starting point. In this case, it is this point right here. And that starting point in this graph is over 0, up 1. So we went up 1, and that's really going to be our biggest hint in terms of this problem. Although if you take a look here, we also have this graph reflected over the y-axis. But the up 1 is going to give it away here, because up 1 means that we're going to be adding 1 to our function, which means that we can eliminate these two. And up 1 is going to be outside of the function, which means it's going to be letter C. The negative underneath the square root means that we reflect over the y. And then what I particularly was looking at is the fact that that's the up 1. Looking at the same picture, it says, what are the domain and the range of the graph? So once again, the way that we looked at the domain and the range here is, remember that domain is going to be the x value, range is going to be the y value. Our x value of our starting point there is 0, and our y value of our starting point is 1. So we know that much, and it looks like, well, we need to be careful in terms of reading those, but the domain has to have a 0 in it, and it looks like I can eliminate those two because the domain doesn't have a 0 in it. And we're going to the left, so this is going to be x is less than or equal to 0. So it's all the values left of that green point. And then compared to that green point, everything else is going to be above, so this is going to be y is greater than or equal to 1. And consequently, it looks like our answer to our domain is going to be A. Domain and range is going to be A. Number 3. Which of the following describes the domain and the range of the function 5 times the square root of 2x plus 8? Solve this algebraically or by considering the shifting transformations that have occurred to the parent function. Well, one other thing, well, let's start by finding our domain, because we're going to take 2x plus a when we set it greater than or equal to 0. Because technically we're not supposed to use a calculator on this one. So let's see if this will help us determine. And we get 2x is greater than or equal to negative 8. Divide both sides by 2. And we get x is greater than or equal to negative 4. And up here, it looks like we've got interval notation. So now that we've got this in set notation, this means negative 4 to infinity. And at least we can eliminate a couple of answers here, like B and C, because we don't have that. So then the only other question here is the range. And in this particular problem, I'm wondering if we can figure out what our transformations are to help us. And I'm going to write under problem number 4 because that's where I have the space. But the number 5 gives us a vertical stretch. And then we've got the domain in there, but does the vertical stretch change anything in terms of our starting point of our graph? And it doesn't, because when we start with our picture here, we would start with 0, 0. And then when we vertically stretched it, it would be 0 times 5, so it would still be 0. And consequently, in terms of the range, that 8 isn't going to be part of our range. Well, it might be part of our range, but it's not going to be the range, because the 8 is going to be moving us to the left. So our answer is going to be this. Range 0, infinity. I will try to put that on the calculator section of it, because I think that we are better off if we're looking at the picture to find the range on that one. But you might have to draw a quick sketch just to kind of get the idea here of that one. But as we look at problem number 4, I kind of wish that I would have done 4 before I answered completely the answer to 3, but it says what value of x is not in the domain of the function. And remember that our domain of our function, we said x is greater than or equal to negative 4. Well, is 0 greater than or equal to negative 4? Is negative 5 greater than or equal to negative 4? No. 4 is bigger than negative 4. 5 is bigger than negative 4. Negative 5 is the only one that is not bigger than negative 4. Number 5. Choose the equation below, which has undergone the transformations of a vertical stretch by 3. So as we take a look in there, can we eliminate any? And the answer is yes, because the vertical stretch is going to be outside of the function. So it's not going to be this one. It's not going to be this one. The 3 has to be outside of the square root. A reflection over the y. Well, a reflection over the y means that the negative has to be inside the function. So there is no negative on the inside, which must mean that our answer is C here. And let's check it with our shift of 2 units down, and minus 2 outside the function does mean 2 units down.